I'm going to talk a little bit about the urban legend or the myth that storms don't hit our part of the state, somewhere anywhere between about Cape Canaveral and Jacksonville. And of course, if you look at the historical records and hurricane tracks, what you'll find over the last 150 years is that as far as named storms, tropical storms, and hurricanes, the numbers have been pretty significant over the last 150 years. If you look at a figure, it looks like a spaghetti diagram. There's storm tracks everywhere coming in from the east, southeast, the west, crossing the peninsula. So it's definitely not true. We see them quite frequently in the region. And the repeat cycle for major storms in the region are maybe every, or at least significant storms on the order of every half a dozen years or so in this area, at least named storms. One of the more famous storms, of course, is Hurricane Floyd. It did a recurvature. In other words, by recurvature, what do I mean? Basically, storms track off of Africa, at least the incipient storms, these areas of disturbed weather, and they move on the southern side of a surface anti-cyclone or high pressure system, and they move from basically east to west on the south side of this system, and they intensify as they cross the Atlantic if the waters are warm enough. And as they make their way on the south side of the anti-cyclone, imagine this thing circulating in an anti-cyclonic fashion, they eventually get to the far western edge of that anti-cyclone and begin moving northwestward, then north, and then back to the northeast as they recurve out to sea. And they call this the subtropical ridge also. You've heard about it. You probably watch the weather forecasts on TV, and they talk about this during the summer. Now the mean position of this surface ridge changes as the season goes along, and where it is during the time of the peak frequency or where most storms form can be very important in terms of determining whether or not you even get landfalling storms in the first place. I mentioned before, Hurricane Floyd is a significant storm that recurved in 1999 before giving the state a pretty big, serious threat at the time it recurved. People remember last season, which was an average season, the subtropical ridge was way out towards England. It had shifted very far east, and so storms tended to recurve northward and then northeastward well out to sea, and so there were no landfalling hurricanes whatsoever last year because of that. So it's a very important feature. I don't want to mislead the viewer into thinking that these features are the only steering currents for these storms. As it turns out, as they become more intense, these storms tend to interact with a deeper layer of winds in the troposphere all the way up to about 15 kilometers or 15,000 meters. So, and so the more intense storms are steered by currents, not just the subtropical ridge, by wind currents at all over the depth of the troposphere. So in summary then, I would point out that indeed it's an urban legend to think that our area is not prone to hurricane landfall or being hit by a hurricane. It's happened quite a bit and it'll continue to happen quite a bit in the future. It's been a part of our weather forever, and the reason that storms recurve would affect South Florida just as much as Central Florida. They're being steered by, in part, the subtropical ridge, and as they intensify, they're steered by the deep tropospheric winds throughout the atmosphere.